SWOT Your Life, From Corporate Strategy to Personal Mastery by Walter Freeman. Chapter 7, Heartstrings and Hurdles. The Strategy of Intimate Connection. Relationships are the one area where strategy feels like a betrayal. We're supposed to love spontaneously, connect authentically, be our true selves. The idea of analyzing your relationship the way you'd analyze a business problem seems cold, calculating, inimical to everything romance is supposed to be. Which is exactly why so many relationships fail. Love is a feeling, but a relationship is a system, a complex interaction of two people's needs, capabilities, contexts, and behaviors. And like any system, it can be understood, improved, and deliberately maintained. The couples who stay happy together aren't the ones who found perfect matches and never had to work at it. They're the ones who figured out how to work at it effectively. This chapter is about bringing strategic thinking to the most emotional arena of your life, not to replace feeling with calculation, but to support feeling with clarity. The couple who scheduled intimacy. Alex and Jordan had been married for 5 years and were sliding toward divorce. On paper, nothing was wrong. They were both successful professionals in New York. They lived in a nice apartment. They had friends who envied their life. But they'd become roommates who happened to share a bed, coordinating logistics without connecting emotionally, going through the motions of a marriage without any of the feeling. They hadn't fought their way to this point. They drifted. That was almost worse. I asked them to SWOT their relationship, and they nearly walked out. This was supposed to be about love, not business analysis. But they'd tried talking, tried therapy, tried date nights that felt like obligations. What did they have to lose? Strengths. They genuinely shared values about the big things: family, integrity, growth. They had a history of overcoming challenges together in their earlier years. They both still wanted the marriage to work, even if they'd lost faith that it could. They had financial stability that removed a huge stressor most couples faced. And they still laughed together sometimes, in moments that surprised them. Weaknesses. Their work schedules meant they were rarely home at the same time while awake. They'd stopped sharing the small details of their days, so they didn't really know each other's current lives. Resentments had accumulated without being addressed, a long list of small wounds that had never healed. They'd outsourced connection to busyness, always doing rather than being together. And they'd stopped touching, which had created its own spiral of distance. Opportunities. Both their jobs had more flexibility than they were using. They could restructure their schedules if they chose to. A couples counselor friend had recommended an app that helped partners stay connected through daily questions. They'd always said they wanted to travel more but never did. And they had the financial resources to invest in their relationship, whether that meant professional help or dedicated time together. Threats. Another few years of drift and they'd be strangers. Both had seen long-term marriages in their families implode after the kids left, and they didn't even have kids as a temporary bond. Their workaholic culture rewarded exactly the behaviors that were killing their marriage, and the intimacy gap was becoming harder to bridge the longer it lasted. The connection that emerged was between the scheduling weakness and the flexibility opportunity. They'd been treating their relationship as something that would survive on whatever time was left after everything else. But there was never time left after everything else. Connection had to be scheduled, protected, prioritized the same way meetings and deadlines were. This felt unromantic until they tried it. They blocked off Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings as non-negotiable couple time. They used the app to exchange one genuine question and answer each day. Small but consistent contact. They started sharing the mundane details of their days again, rebuilding the fabric of knowing each other. And they addressed the intimacy gap directly, scheduling physical connection the way they'd schedule anything important. Not because they didn't feel desire, but because desire had been crowded out by exhaustion and distance. Making space for it brought it back. A year later, they were better than they'd ever been, not despite the structure, but because of it. The scheduling hadn't replaced spontaneity. It had created the conditions for spontaneity to happen. The marriage that moved countries. Hiroshi and Yumi had been married 20 years when his company offered a transfer from Tokyo to Singapore. It was a promotion, a raise, and adventure. It also threatened to destroy their marriage. Yumi didn't want to go. Her aging parents were in Japan. Her career was in Japan. Her friends, her language, her sense of self, all anchored in a country her husband was now asking her to leave. They argued for months without resolution. Every conversation became a referendum on whose needs mattered more. They were stuck. A friend suggested they map the situation rather than argue about it. Not to find a winner, but to understand what they were actually dealing with. Strengths. 20 years together meant they knew each other deeply. They'd weathered previous transitions and knew what the other needed to feel secure. They had financial stability that gave them options. Yumi's mother had siblings nearby who could help with her parents. And their communication, when they weren't arguing about this specific issue, was strong. Weaknesses. They'd never developed a framework for making major decisions together. All their previous big decisions had felt more obvious. Yumi struggled to articulate her needs when they conflicted with Hiroshi's ambitions. She tended to defer and then resent. Hiroshi tended to dismiss emotional concerns as impractical, which made Yumi feel unheard. And they were both catastrophizing, imagining the worst versions of whatever choice they didn't make. Opportunities. Singapore was a 3-hour flight from Japan, close enough for regular visits. Yumi's career skills were transferable if she wanted to work abroad. The international experience could benefit both of them in ways they couldn't predict, and their marriage could be strengthened by navigating a big challenge together, if they found a way to do it as partners. Threats. Going without genuine agreement would poison the experience. Staying and resenting it would poison their marriage from the other direction. Her parents' health could decline while they were away, and the longer they stayed stuck, the more damage the stuckness itself was causing. The map revealed something both had missed. The real issue wasn't whether to go, it was how to decide. They didn't have a way to navigate conflicting needs that honored both people. They stepped back from the Singapore question and addressed the decision-making gap. They developed explicit agreements. Both people's concerns would be named and respected, even if not accommodated. Major sacrifices would be matched with compensating investments. The person making the bigger sacrifice got more say in the terms. With that framework in place, they found a path. They would go to Singapore for 2 years, with guaranteed trips home every 6 weeks. Yumi would spend the first 6 months settling before looking for work, giving her time to adjust. If her parents' health declined, they would reassess immediately rather than waiting. They went. It was hard. But it was also the adventure they'd promised each other in their wedding vows. And the process of navigating it together made their marriage stronger than it had been in years. Your relationship SWOT. Every relationship is a system that can be understood and improved. This doesn't make it less loving, it makes love more effective. For strengths, consider: what works well between you? What values do you share? What have you overcome together? What do you genuinely enjoy about each other? What would be hard to find again if you lost this relationship? For weaknesses, consider: what patterns keep causing problems? What conversations do you avoid? What needs aren't being met? What assumptions have you made about each other that might be wrong? What skills are you missing for navigating conflict or connection? For opportunities, consider: what could you do together that you haven't tried? What resources are available? Time, money, professional help that you're not using? What's changing in your lives that might create new possibilities? What has worked in the past that you've stopped doing? For threats, consider: what patterns might become unfixable if they continue? What external pressures are building? What might happen if you don't address what's not working? What are the early warning signs you're ignoring? Do this SWOT together if you can. A relationship is built by both people, and understanding it requires both perspectives. Then look for the connections. Alex and Jordan found that their schedule flexibility could address their time together weakness. Hiroshi and Yumi found that building a decision-making framework could convert their transition threat into a bonding opportunity. Love isn't enough to sustain a relationship, but love combined with clarity might be.